Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And here we have a great article from Seeking Alpha. I will leave it in the description down below so you guys could check it out. So, every carrier currently in the United States, at least on the MNO side, mobile network operator, has different long term goals. But even after the Sprint merger closed, T-Mobile's goal largely still remains the same. It's expand the network and grow and take share. That's pretty much its long-term goal, and that's been the long-term goal even years ago. Just build network, expand network, grow share. And with the Sprint assets, that just further accelerated the network. So now T-Mobile can go grow in all aspects of business. They can go grow fixed wireless access. That's a business they're taking part of. They can go grow enterprise. They can go grow small business. They can grow government accounts. You name it, T-Mobile can now do it. So pieces from this article that I wanted to talk about. So T-Mobile, famous for network, requires confirmation. So just to look at the summary, T-Mobile US is the second wireless communication service provider in the United States. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about that. T-Mobile is not basing that number off of total connections. They're only basing that off of postpaid. So very soon, if this continues, T-Mobile is going to outpace Verizon in that regard too. I think I looked at it briefly recently. T-Mobile's at like 88 million, Verizon's at 91. So my assumption, as soon as T-Mobile surpasses that 91 million, they're going to claim to be the number one wireless carrier in the United States. The company records large growth rates in revenue and EPS. The company expects large synergies following the Sprint merger. They're still trying to extract those synergies, so keep that in mind. Growth rate and cost saving require confirmation, just as the share price seems overvalued. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to cover here in this video. So this is probably going to be a bit of a longer video. So T-Mobile is walking a fine line, or a very thin line, I should say, when it comes to revenue, free cash flow, and then capital, right? Capital is the engine. You have to look at it as that is going to drive you to the next destination, for as an example, right? You got to invest and feed parts of the network where you want to grow. So as T-Mobile discusses license to play, license to win, they go into markets where they didn't exist before. They put up a network, they put up retail distribution. Now they can play, they can compete, and that's what T-Mobile considers license to play. How do they achieve that license to play? How do they accelerate that? It comes from the capital. That is the only way that they can accelerate any of this. But looking at it from an investor standpoint, looking at it strategically, T-Mobile has done this very smartly. In large part, it may not have all been the capital and the network that has been driving the growth. It's been other parts like execution, great marketing, great customer service, great NPS scores. All of that together combined has helped T-Mobile grow and continue to grow, right? There's been a lot of parts where T-Mobile has never had any service, but people that live there have seen T-Mobile's national marketing on TV. So there's already going to be a percentage of customers in a lot of these small markets that T-Mobile moves into that have wanted to try T-Mobile for years now. They may have liked the deal. They may need something cheaper, whatever the case may be. They are already aware of T-Mobile. So that's from a management perspective, that is a very, very important part to T-Mobile's overall business. It can't just be the network, right? Verizon overall has the best, most premium network. That's what they're claiming. That's what we're seeing on the third-party testing. But it has resulted in them taking some massive losses. So you gotta be able to balance the two. And even as T-Mobile continuously gets more aggressive in these small markets and rural towns, I am very confident in saying that in a lot of those parts, they probably still won't have a network that's up to par, but they're still going to grow because they're taking the same playbook that won them leading share in the top 50 into those small markets. T-Mobile, and I'm going on record, T-Mobile won the leading market share in the top 50 United States markets with an inferior product. They did. They didn't work at stadiums. They had densification, but they had the inferior product to its competitors. But they still grew to the leading share. So you got to look at that, and then you got to say, well, how did they accomplish that? Well, you got to look at everything. You got to look at customer service. You got to look at marketing. You got to look at pricing. You got to look at plans. You got to look at all of that to form an opinion about the situation. So I wanted to talk about give me 1 second. Okay, this is what I wanted to talk about here, the cash flow and the CapEx. So this is a very thin line. T-Mobile this year is going to come in at around 13.8, 13.9 billion, give or take. And that's peak. And that is for T-Mobile, that is a very high year of CapEx. Now, of course, the list is very long as to why the CapEx was this high, right? They needed to in large part complete the Sprint decommissioning, which of course is going to take capital. They needed to convert the Sprint keep sites to T-Mobile equipment. They needed to, still upgrade T-Mobile sites with N41. They of course needed to build new sites as well. The small cells, you name it, T-Mobile had to do it. So that was the justification for the much higher CapEx for this physical year. But in order for them to continue increasing the revenues and the free cash flow, they're going to have to step that CapEx down. And recently, Mike Sievert did say, he mentioned a number 8 to 9 billion. And a lot of people, had a small panic attack because that's a very low amount. That's, if I remember T-Mobile's peak years as a standalone, I think they peaked around between 5.6 to 6.1 billion. And that was T-Mobile as a standalone. So this would only be maybe 2 to 3 billion more now as this bigger company. But so you got to hear me out on this. T-Mobile is a very prudent, smartly disciplined company, if you will. They are not going to force an acceleration that they would get to over time anyway. Right? They're not going to come out next year and say, okay, we're going to plow another 16 billion into the network because it's going to get us this and that and that. That's not how it works, right? Verizon and AT&T do have those high CapEx because they have to operate a much larger business in that sense. Right? A much more higher cost network, a much more larger network. And T-Mobile can build itself into that, if that makes sense. So next year we get 8 to 9 billion. In Mike Sievert said in large part, the large undertaking of the modernization has been completed. So now that 8 to 9 billion, now they can feed into, okay, we're going to grow in these small markets. We're going to add retail distribution here. We're going to fine tune the network. We're going to add some indoor DAS systems in this market. We're going to fix this NBA arena with some indoor DAS systems. We're going to touch this NFL stadium. That's what they can start doing with that 8 to 9 billion. We can start expanding the network more in rural America. And then, of course, there's always going to be a case or two where you do need more sites in an urban environment. There's still going to be some markets where they have to deploy more N41, depending, right? They do want to get to 300 million covered by the end of 2023 with N41. So T-Mobile is approaching this very smartly. They could by all means, be more aggressive. They very well could. They're obviously in a position to do so. They have reached investment grade ratings, so they could borrow debt if they need to, or if they wanted it to. They could get into that fiber play if they want to, which I still think is kind of a big risk, because that's a big money pit that you have to throw money into in order to get returns out of it. So that's another thing too. So that's what I think about the cash flow and the capex situation. I think people are blowing it a bit out of proportion. Yes, I know 8 to 9 billion is fairly low, but if it's going to lead to T-Mobile getting to that next level of growth that they're anticipating for 2023, then that 8 to 9 billion was very well worth it. Could they spend 10? Could they spend 11? Sure, they could. But if you're looking at the smart operations of T-Mobile, they're looking at the stock, they're looking at investors, they're looking at free cash flow, they're looking at profits. So if that 8 to 9 billion is going to achieve what they want to achieve, then why not, right? If there's all of a sudden a huge competitive threat and stuff starts to backfire, then of course I could see them saying, okay, we're going to do 10, we're going to do 11, maybe 12 here. But right now, I just don't see that in the cards for T-Mobile. And the public commentary that we've heard so far clearly states that the capex is coming down for the fiscal year 2023. I mean, they've said that on multiple occasions now. I've heard Peter Osvaldik say it. I've heard Mike Sievert say it. I think I've heard Neville say it. There is a step down coming, which the market and the street, they're going to like that a lot. We've recently, I don't know if we don't really cover that on the channel, but Charter recently had their analyst day, and they guided a much higher capex than the street was anticipating, and the stock went down significantly. So that's how I view the whole situation. I think T-Mobile is doing it from a strategic standpoint. The free cash flow is going to go up. The revenue will show an increase based on the capex drop. And I still think they can have a competitive year in 2023 with the 8 to 9 billion. That's still a lot of money. It's not 20, I get it, but T-Mobile is not really moving in the direction of an AT&T and Verizon. They don't have the large other businesses to fund. They don't have a fiber network that they own and operate as of yet. So the 8 to 9 billion it's going to be meaningful, and it's going to be impactful, right? Of course, there's still going to be some investment going into 2024, and of course 2025 as well. But T-Mobile knows where they want to head. They know how they want to get there, and this is a very, very big start to them getting there, in my opinion. So I will leave this article in the description down below so you guys could check it out. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe to the channel. Follow my social media outlets for more updates and interactions. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.